During my son's funeral, my stepfather smirked, my mom called me a burden, and my sister took a selfie at his grave. They all refused to help pay, then bought a hot tub. Until I sent a bill to someone who had been waiting to make them pay. I still remember the sound of the dirt hitting my son's casket, sharp, dull thuds that made my knees shake. It was a cold afternoon in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I couldn't stop staring at the name carved into the wood. Eli James Carter, 2013-2024. My boy was only 11. Everyone said they were so sorry for my loss, but the people who should have cared most were the ones who made everything worse. My stepfather leaned against the hearse, chewing a toothpick, and said loud enough for me to hear, "Well, one less mouth to feed, I guess." My mother didn't even look at me. She just whispered, "Maybe now you'll be less of a burden." I had nothing left to say. I just walked away and stood by the oak tree near the cemetery gates. That's when my sister, Kayla, showed up in her new beige coat and started taking selfies next to Eli's grave. She smiled, actually smiled, and posted one to her Instagram story with the caption, "Sometimes tragedy brings peace bouquet sparkles. People think grief makes you soft. They don't realize how it burns." My hands were shaking so bad I dropped my coffee right there in the mud. 2 weeks before, I had begged my parents for help. The burial cost over $8,000, and my insurance barely covered half. My stepdad told me, "We're not paying for your mistakes." The same week, they posted a Facebook photo of themselves in their brand new backyard hot tub, captioned, "Finally enjoying life." I sold Eli's bike, his Xbox, the last things that still smelled like him. I maxed out my credit card and took a payday loan just to give him a real resting place. Not a cheap cremation, not the discount plot they said was good enough. Every night since, I'd been lying awake, staring at the wall, wondering how people could be so cruel, especially your own family. But then something strange happened. I was sorting through the paperwork from the funeral home when I saw an old envelope I didn't recognize. Inside was a note and a folded receipt. The note just said, "If you ever want them to feel what you felt, send this to me." No name, no return address, but the receipt was from a private investigator in Maryland. And under service provided, it said, "Confirmed subject contact, request fulfilled." My first thought was that it had to be a scam, but then I noticed something else, a tiny, handwritten signature at the bottom. One I hadn't seen in over 10 years. And when I realized whose name it was, I felt my chest go cold. Because that person had promised me once, "If anyone ever hurts you again, I'll make them pay." And now it looked like they were keeping their promise. Before all this, I'd already been the black sheep in my family. My mom married my stepfather, Ron, when I was 14. He was one of those men who smiled for neighbors and yelled behind closed doors. The first time he called me useless, I was washing dishes. By the end of high school, I believed him. When I got pregnant with Eli at 19, my mom told me, "You'd better not expect us to raise your mistake." I moved out the same week, couch-hopped for months, and worked double shifts at a diner in York just to afford a one-bedroom. I never asked them for help again, not until Eli got sick. Eli was born healthy. Smart kid, always building things, Lego towers, cardboard cities, even a little robot dog he tried to make from an old toaster. But when he turned 10, he started getting dizzy spells. Then headaches. The doctors found a tumor pressing against his optic nerve. I tried everything. Clinical trials, fundraisers, selling my car. Ron called it attention-seeking. Mom said I was milking pity. Kayla, my perfect Instagram sister, posted a family tragedy awareness story with Eli's picture and her Venmo link for support. I never saw a dime of that money. By the time the treatment stopped working, Eli was barely speaking. He'd hold my hand and whisper, "It's okay, Mom, you'll be fine." He was 11 and already comforting me through his own death. I'd sit by his hospital bed at Lancaster General, pretending to be strong while my family ignored every call I made. The night he died, I left them a voicemail anyway. I told them Eli was gone. No one came. Not until the funeral, when they all showed up acting like they were the ones suffering. Ron made jokes to the priest about young parents learning the hard way. Mom told people I'd always been emotional. Kayla filmed herself crying in the car with a caption, "Grief is a lesson in strength." The day after the funeral, I went back to my apartment, sat on Eli's bed, and just stared at the note again, the one that came with the investigator's receipt. The signature at the bottom was unmistakable. Dean Walters. Dean had been my ex, or maybe something more complicated. We dated in high school before Ron came into the picture. Dean was protective to the point of obsession. When Ron first hit me, just once, but hard enough to leave a mark, Dean was the one who showed up at my house with a baseball bat. My mom threatened to call the police if he ever came back. He left town after that. I hadn't heard from him in over a decade. Now, somehow, after all these years, he knew. He knew about Eli, about what my family did. The next day, I called the number printed faintly on the receipt. It rang twice before a woman's voice answered, calm, professional, but oddly cautious. Blue Ridge Investigations, how can I help you? I hesitated. Hi, I found a receipt from your company. It's addressed to Dean Walters. Silence. Then she said quietly, he told me you might call. That's when my heart started pounding, because it meant Dean wasn't just watching. He was waiting. The woman from Blue Ridge Investigations told me her name was Sandra. Her voice was soft, steady, but every word felt like she was choosing it carefully. Dean said if you ever called, she said, I should give you this message. It's still not too late. My throat went dry. Not too late for what? She didn't answer right away. He's doing something for you, she said finally. Something about making it right. I asked where he was. She said she wasn't supposed to say. When I pressed, she just added, he's closer than you think. That call replayed in my head for days. I barely slept. Every knock on the door made me jump. I started locking all 3 deadbolts and kept Eli's baseball bat by the bed. Then, a week later, an envelope slid under my door. No return address. Inside was a photo, grainy, taken from a distance of my mom and Ron in their hot tub. Kayla was there too, laughing, holding a drink. Scrawled across the bottom in red ink were 5 words. Debt has many forms, Lily. I dropped it like it was burning. That night, I called Sandra again. She told me not to worry, that Dean wasn't dangerous. He just believes in justice, she said. He's passionate about protecting people who can't protect themselves. I asked if she knew about Eli, about what my family had said. She did. Apparently, Dean had kept tabs on me for years, quietly. He said you never got what you deserved, peace, she whispered. The next morning, a delivery showed up. A small wooden box. Inside were 3 printed invoices for the funeral costs, medical bills, and the headstone. Each one had been stamped with a single word in red. Collected. My stomach twisted. I thought it was some sick joke until I checked my online loan accounts. 2 were marked paid in full. The balance on my credit card had been wiped. Even my rent had cleared early. Someone, maybe Dean, had just erased my debt. But with every paid notice came dread. Because nothing like that comes free. That weekend, I drove to my parents' house. Their new hot tub was bubbling in the yard, steam rising into the gray November air. I knocked. Mom opened the door, wine glass in hand, fake smile plastered on. What now, Lily? She sighed. I just stared at her. Did someone contact you? Anyone named Dean? She frowned. Who the hell is Dean? Behind her, I saw movement, Ron watching football in the living room, yelling at the screen. Kayla was curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone, taking selfies in her robe. That's when I realized they had no idea. None. When I left, I checked my rearview mirror. A dark sedan was parked a few houses down, headlights off. Someone was inside. I told myself it was nothing, just paranoia. But when I got home, another letter was waiting on my doorstep. This one said, next time they'll learn what loss feels like. And under it, stapled to the page, was a photo of my stepfather's truck, sitting in their driveway. 2 nights later, I woke up to my phone buzzing nonstop. Missed calls, texts from Kayla, even one from my mom, first time she'd messaged me since the funeral. Mom, your psycho ex vandalized the house. Police are coming. Kayla. WTF did you do, Lily? Mom again. Don't you ever involve us in your drama again. I shot up out of bed, heart pounding. I hadn't seen Dean in years. How could he even know where they lived? But then I remembered that photo of their truck. When I drove by their house the next morning, there were tire tracks all through the yard. The truck's windshield was smashed in, and Thieves was spray-painted in black across their garage door. For a second, I actually smiled. I hated that I did, but the satisfaction was real. Then I saw the police cruiser. Ron was shouting at the officer, jabbing his finger toward me the second my car appeared. I barely had time to park before they were waving me over. The officer asked if I knew anyone named Dean Walters. My stomach dropped. I told them the truth, that I hadn't spoken to him in years, that I didn't know where he was. Ron smirked and said, "Of course she does. She probably put him up to this. Couldn't handle being called a bad mother." That's when my mom said something I'll never forget. "She's always been dramatic, anything for attention. Maybe she's finally getting what she wanted." They filed a police report. I gave my statement and went home shaking. I didn't want this. I didn't want to be part of something like this again. But later that night, another message arrived. This time it was a text from an unknown number, "Dean. I told you I'd make them pay. This is just the start." I stared at the screen for a long time. My first instinct was to reply, to tell him to stop. But then I thought about Eli. About how I'd begged my mom for help paying for his chemo and she'd said, "Maybe it's time to accept reality." Maybe part of me did want them to suffer. Still, I texted back, "Dean, please." "No more." He responded almost instantly. "Dean, funny. They didn't say please when they watched you drown." That line made my blood run cold. "Watched me drown." I called him, but he didn't answer. Instead, a voicemail came through, not from Dean, but from Sandra, the investigator. "Lily, I'm so sorry," she said softly. "Dean asked me to tell you the truth if you ever started asking questions. He didn't just find you again. He's been working for your family, until 2 months ago." I froze. "What do you mean working for them?" I asked. Her voice trembled. "Your stepfather hired him years ago, said he needed someone to keep tabs on you. Make sure you didn't come around asking for money. He didn't know Dean used to be your ex." I could barely breathe. "So Dean's been watching me this whole time?" "Yes," she whispered. "But when he found out what they'd done to your son, he turned on them." The phone slipped out of my hand. Everything, the letters, the photos, the paid debts, suddenly made a horrifying kind of sense. Dean hadn't just reappeared out of loyalty. He'd been their spy, until guilt or rage flipped the story. And now I realized he wasn't just after revenge for me. He was trying to destroy them for himself. After Sandra told me the truth, I sat in my apartment with all the blinds closed, shaking. Dean had been watching me for years, reporting to Ron. To them. Every struggle, every eviction notice, every time Eli was back in the hospital, he saw it, and he told them. It was sick. I didn't know whether to hate him or thank him for finally turning on them. Both feelings hit at once. That night, I pulled out a box from my closet, Eli's things I hadn't been able to touch since the funeral. His drawings, a broken Lego figure, the hospital wristband. At the bottom was an old USB drive. The same one Ron had forced me to use years ago when I'd worked at his construction company, doing their payroll and taxes for extra cash. I plugged it in. Files popped up: invoices 2018, bids, tax docs, and something else, a folder called Client 1009. Password protected. It took me a few tries, but I guessed it. Kayla 1998. When it opened, I couldn't believe what I saw. Fake invoices, bribes, over $50,000 in off-the-books money Ron had taken from local contracts. And my mom had been signing as witness on half of them. That was when something inside me snapped. If Dean wanted revenge, he could have it, but on my terms. I wasn't going to let him handle this with bats and spray paint. I was going to ruin them properly. I spent the next few nights collecting everything. Screenshots, copies, even the photos Dean had sent. Then I made my own move. I created 3 envelopes. Each had a printed letter inside, addressed to different people. The IRS field office in Philadelphia. The Pennsylvania Contractor Licensing Board. A journalist I used to serve coffee to at the diner, Sarah Kim, who now wrote for Lancaster Local. Inside each, I included copies of Ron's forged invoices and a brief statement. Public corruption and tax evasion at Carter and Sons Construction. Signed, a witness. But before I mailed them, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I sent photos of the envelopes to Dean. He replied right away, "Dean, you really think paper justice fixes what they did to Eli? Me, it fixes their future, that's enough." He didn't respond for hours. When he finally did, it was only one line. "Dean, then you'll want to see what happens tomorrow." The next day, I got a text from Kayla. No words, just a crying emoji and a video link. It showed fire trucks outside my mom's house, black smoke pouring from the garage, the hot tub melted to plastic. No one was hurt, but the place was destroyed. Police said it was an electrical fire, but I knew better. I called Sandra in a panic, yelling, "You have to stop him." She said she hadn't heard from him in days, his phone was off, his motel room empty. Then she said quietly, "He left something for you." She emailed me a document, a scanned bill, the same funeral home letterhead as before, except this one wasn't mine. It was a burial invoice, and the name on it made me go cold. Ronald Carter paid in advance. When I saw my stepfather's name on that funeral invoice, I thought it had to be a threat, a warning, something to scare me. But Sandra's voice on the phone didn't sound like she was bluffing. "He paid for it himself," she said softly. "3 weeks ago." "What do you mean he paid for it?" I demanded. She hesitated. "Dean came into the office last month with cash. Said it was for a pre-need arrangement under Ronald Carter. He told us it was insurance." My stomach turned. "Insurance for what?" Sandra sighed. "He said, sometimes justice needs a schedule." That was the moment I realized Dean wasn't just angry, he was methodical. This wasn't revenge in the heat of the moment. He'd been planning. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound outside my window made me jump. I kept replaying everything, the smashed truck, the house fire, the bills paid off. I knew what came next. The next morning, I drove straight to my parents' place. Police tape still hung across the yard. My mom was sitting in a folding chair on the driveway, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the ashes of what used to be her house. She looked smaller somehow, old. When she saw me, her face twisted. "You happy now?" she hissed. "You and your psycho boyfriend got what you wanted." I ignored her. "Where's Ron?" "He's gone to work like always." Some of us don't have time to sit around feeling sorry for ourselves. But when I drove past his job site 20 minutes later, the construction lot on Walnut Street, his truck was there, parked, door open. And no sign of him. The foreman said he hadn't seen Ron all day. Just found the truck idling with the keys in it around 7 and thought maybe he went for breakfast. That night, police called. They'd found the truck abandoned at the edge of the Conestoga River. Door open. Wallet and phone still inside. No body. I wanted to throw up. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Dean had gone too far. Except the next day he called me. His voice was calm, warm, almost relieved. "You don't have to worry anymore," he said. "Dean, what did you do?" "I finished it," he said. "Now you can start over. You and Eli can both rest." I screamed at him, told him he was sick, told him I never asked for this. He didn't argue. He just said something that chilled me to the bone. "You always told me your family ruined your life. I just made sure they couldn't do it again." Then he hung up. But that wasn't the end. Because 2 days later, I got another call from a number I didn't recognize. A man's voice. Raspy, slow. "Is this Lily Carter?" "Yes, who is this?" "This is Officer Kent with the Lancaster PD. We located your stepfather." My heart jumped. "He's alive." A pause. "Yes, but you'll want to come down here. He has something to tell you." When I walked into that hospital room, Ron looked like death. Bruised, soaked, eyes bloodshot. He could barely speak. But what he said next turned everything I thought I knew completely upside down. He whispered, "You think Dean did this for you?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. He gave a broken laugh that turned into a cough. "He didn't. He did it for her." I frowned. "Who?" Ron's eyes met mine, and for the first time I saw real fear there. "Your mother," he rasped. "Dean's been seeing your mother for years." At first I thought Ron was delirious, maybe concussed or still drunk. My mother and Dean? It didn't make sense. He was my first love, my only safe person back then. But the way Ron's voice broke when he said it made me stop breathing. "He's been coming around since before Eli got sick," Ron said. "She told me it was nothing, that she was just keeping an old friend company. But I found messages. He called her his unfinished chapter." I shook my head. "You're lying." Ron gave a bitter smile. "Why do you think he knew where you lived? Why he knew everything about your son's illness before you told anyone?" I didn't have an answer. He coughed again, reaching for the water cup, hand trembling. "She used you, Lily. Both of them did. Your mother told him you were fragile, easy to manipulate. She told him to keep tabs on you because she didn't want you coming after her for the money your dad left you." I froze. "What money?" Ron gave a laugh that sounded more like a wheeze. "The insurance from your father's death. 50 grand, left in your name. Your mom cashed it the year you turned 18, claimed it was for your college fund. She spent it on the down payment for this house." It hit me like a punch. All those years I'd thought we were broke. that my mom couldn't help me after Eli got sick, and the money had been mine all along. Ron closed his eyes. Dean knew, she told him. He's been helping her cover it up for years. She told him you were unstable, that you might dig into her finances, ruin her marriage. He was supposed to keep you calm, keep you distracted, keep you poor. I couldn't speak. My brain was buzzing, like static filling every space where words should be. She promised him a piece of it, Ron whispered. When she sold the house. That's why he turned on us when the fire started. He thought she'd betrayed him. The world spun. Everything lined up in my head all at once. The letters, the money wiped clean, the insurance Dean had paid for, the timing of the fire. Dean hadn't done this for me. He'd done it for my mother until she turned on him. That night, I drove straight to her temporary motel, the one the insurance company had put her in after the fire. She opened the door wearing a silk robe and holding a glass of Chardonnay. When she saw my face, her smile faltered. "What's wrong?" I stepped inside without asking. "Where's Dean?" Her eyes flicked sideways, quick like a reflex. Then she said too fast, "I haven't seen him." I scanned the room. 2 wine glasses, a man's jacket slung over the chair. I looked at her and said quietly, "You've been lying my whole life." She sighed, putting her drink down. "Lily, you've never understood how hard it was raising you. You always needed saving." Dean understood that. He wanted to help. "Help," I snapped. "He stalked me. He destroyed your house. He tried to kill Ron." She didn't even flinch. "Ron deserved it, you know that." There was a coldness in her eyes I'd never seen before, or maybe I had, and just never wanted to admit it. I took a step back. "You told him about Dad's insurance, didn't you? You used him." Her lips curved into a slow, quiet smile. "I use what I can, Lily. You should have learned that by now." My hands started shaking again. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to hit her. But then I realized something. She wasn't scared. She wasn't ashamed. She expected me to break, so I didn't. I just said, "Then I guess it's my turn to use what I can, too." And that's when I decided exactly how she was going to pay, for Eli, for the lies, and for every dollar she'd stolen. I kept my hands clean. I'd learned a long time ago that the worst things feel good in the moment and poison you later. So I used paper, not bats. I used other people's curiosity and the law, the 2 things my family always underestimated. First, I copied everything onto 3 flash drives and handed one to Sarah Kim at Lancaster Local. I didn't go viral with it. I gave it to a journalist who actually dug. Sarah called me the next day asking for a meeting. I told her the raw version. The insurance money my mother cashed, the forged contractor invoices, the Venmo where Kayla pretended to help Eli but never sent it, the letters Dean had sent, and the way Ron had blamed me in front of Eli's casket. I gave her the biggest shocker, a scanned check with my mother's signature and a note referencing the life insurance payout dated 2 days after I turned 18. Sarah didn't write the headline like a revenge cookbook. She wrote it like a prosecutor would. The story dropped on a Tuesday morning. Local construction firm, family finances under investigation after whistleblower evidence. Within 48 hours, the Lancaster County IRS field office called. The contractor licensing board opened a complaint. The paper ran follow-ups with quotes from a lawyer about tax fraud and civil liability. I sat in my car in the diner parking lot and watched my phone light up like a slot machine's subpoenas, requests for interviews, one polite call from a firm offering to represent me pro bono. Kayla begged me to stop. Mom sent frantic texts that read like they were being typed by someone sweating through silk. Ron finally tried to play the victim on a local morning show, but the evidence didn't care for tears. The county suspension on Carter and Sons licenses came next. The bank froze accounts while auditors sorted through the red flags. People who had once tipped their hats to Ron were suddenly closing accounts and returning calls with silence. They lost the house. Not the quick fire fix kind of loss that leaves sympathy and drywall crews. The bank foreclosed after auditors found the insurance money discrepancy. The hot tub, the one that had been bought the same week my son was buried, was hauled away on a flatbed that smelled faintly of mildew and plastic and public shame. Kayla's followers evaporated like the steam she used to photograph herself in. She deleted her accounts. I could have pressed criminal charges. I could have told Dean to finish what he started. But I wanted them to see the slow collision of consequences. The way bills pile up, phone calls stop, friends choose sides. I wanted them to understand what it felt like to be stripped of illusions, slowly and publicly. When the funeral director called to tell me the estate was being audited and that a settlement had been proposed, that the insurance company was reopening the payout because of the forged documents, I felt something like peace. Not a cinematic annihilation, not a vendetta with fireworks. Real peace, papers signed, money finally redirected to a trust for Eli's little sister, the child I'd been scared to have because saving one hurt everything else. The trust paid off the loans I'd taken, cleared my name, and gave me something I hadn't had in a long time: breathing room. I visited the cemetery one gray afternoon, the same oak tree in Lancaster casting a long shadow. I ran my hand over Eli's headstone. I thought of how they had tried to make me small, and of how smallness had been a lie I refused to carry any longer. Mom called while I was standing there. She cried and begged. I let it ring out. Weeks later, Ron called from a county office where he'd been answering to auditors. He sounded older, dulled by paperwork and guilt. "You did what was right," he said when I picked up. I told him I wasn't interested in thanks. I don't know what happened to Dean for sure. Sandra told me he disappeared for a while after the fire and then surfaced to help the investigators. A weird, perfunctory hero who wanted to fix what he'd broken. Maybe he'll come back someday. Maybe he won't. I rebuilt, slowly. I bought a small house just outside Lancaster with the trust money and a thrifted crib for the daughter I named June. I kept Eli's baseball bat, not as a weapon, but as a memory of how fiercely I protected what I loved. At his grave, I left a small, crooked Lego robot, the one he made from a toaster. It never had to be perfect to be hers to look at. They taught me what cruelty looks like. I taught them what consequences feel like. Sometimes justice is loud and dramatic. Mostly it's quiet, boring, and irreversible. And if anyone asks if I regret how I did it, exposing them, letting the law do its work, I'll tell them no. Eli got a proper resting place. I didn't become them. That's the part that mattered most. So I sleep now. Not because everything is fixed, but because I earned the right to close my eyes without hearing Ron's voice telling me I was a burden. That's revenge enough. Kicker. I finally stopped being the problem in their story and started being the ending.